Now, this is going to be a good one right here, right? Something I want to break down for y'all. It's something I call the Strawman principle, right? Now, what is the Strawman principle? Now, the Strawman principle is based somewhat around like an inversion of a strawman fallacy that you see within public speaking and debate. Now, one thing to know about me is that back when I was first graduating from technical college, I was the tutor for the public speaking class, right? Because I was a writing tutor and a public speaking tutor. So one thing that we had to do is we had to know how to form a proper syllogism. We had to know how to form good arguments. And one thing that we had to make sure that we avoided doing was using logical fallacies. There's several logical fallacies, right? Now, one thing that you'll notice is that logical fallacies are typically the defense mechanisms that arise naturally out of an individual who is feeling insecure, challenged, or threatened by the argument of another individual. It's how they cope. And sometimes these coping mechanisms are built into the system of some people's ideologies, right? But at other times, these coping mechanisms are internally defensive mechanisms that pop up without any need for forethought or any need to be taught how to do this, right? Now, oftentimes in a forward-moving argument, someone may use a straw man fallacy on a person, right? And to create a weaker version of their argument so that they can destroy it. That's what a straw man is. Let's say you're having a dispute or discussion with an individual. They're telling you their point of view. You disagree with them. So in order to make that an easier fight for yourself, you take their argument, you whittle it down into the weakest possible interpretation. And then from the weakest possible interpretation, you destroy that weakest possible interpretation. That is a straw man, right? Kind of works like substitution jutsu, right? Now, something to understand is this. We have to understand that a woman has an animus, right? There's the internal father. There's the internal masculine. For most women, when they're getting into their masculine energy, it's a defense mechanism to protect themselves in the situation or in the instance that they're either in an environment where they feel they may be judged. If they're very insecure, they may be in a position where they feel they may judge themselves. They also may be in a position where something is desired from them that they don't want to give, right? And it also may be a scenario in which they just have a low cup. So sometimes it's low desire, sometimes it's low cup, and sometimes it's a lack of a certain level of respect. See, there's different levels of respect, right? There are different levels of respect. There's respecting someone as a sentient being, saying that I respect the fact that I believe that you have life and that you have a mind of your own, that you have a mind, that you can think in some capacity. Doesn't mean necessarily that you think well, right? But it just means that you have a capacity to think, to know that you exist, right? So that might be like the respect that we give to dogs, right? The respect that we give to animals. We'd probably give more respect to animals than we'd give to maybe bugs at times, or then at times we may give to trees, right? And that's a different argument altogether. I'm not one of those tree huggers, but I believe it's been scientifically proven that when you cut grass or when you harm a plant, that it does release chemicals that express it as experiencing discomfort. That's something that'll fuck the vegans and vegetarians' heads up, right? But there's that level of respect, right? Then there's the respect of a person, right? Where you might go out and hunt a rabid dog, right? Or you might go out and hunt a deer, or you might hunt rabbits, right? Or you might go hog hunting, or you might hunt coyote, or you might hunt different things that you may go hunting. There's typically a line there about how much respect that you show towards different types of life depending on what your purpose is. If your purpose is something that you believe is for sport or for food, the more about survival it is, the more you may be willing to cross that line of taking a life, right? So typically, the closer an animal is to displaying traits that we correlate to humanness, right? To humanity, the less comfortable we feel with killing those animals unless we get closer towards the side of psychopathy and sociopathy, right? So most Americans would not feel comfortable eating dogs. And some of this is socialized, right? And all the stuff I'm saying is going to relate to each other. So just be patient, right? All of these things are socialized. Well, not all of it, but some of it is socialized. Like if we go over to China, it is no big thing to go out to the market and see people eating dogs. That's not a bad thing. That's just their culture. They may not view dogs completely in the same way. Sometimes you can compartmentalize it, right? Like you can eat pork all day, but if you have a pet pig, you may not be willing to kill it unless you develop a certain level of emotional discipline into understanding the purpose of that. Killing something that you love is something that kills part of something inside of you, right? Like if you ever watch Game of Thrones, they have the story of the Unsullied, right? The Unsullied would have to raise a puppy for a year, and then they have to kill it after they formed an emotional attachment and bond to it in order to kill off some of their innocence. Now, the next level of respect, like I was speaking of, is respect of a person. Now, most people aren't going to go out and killing people unless there's a very good reason, or unless they have extreme antisocial behaviors, right? Personality traits, disorders. So respecting someone as a person, as a human, typically means that you don't just desire something bad to happen to them or harm to come their way for no reason, unless you have certain traits that stem from being damaged, right? But above the level of respect of someone just being a person, right? Above that is the respecting someone as a man, right? And what I mean is masculine respect. Now, this doesn't mean the person has to be a man to receive masculine respect. Understand what I'm saying by this. Don't take this as a misogynistic statement. If you do, I don't really care, but I'm just breaking it down to you. Now, masculine respect is to respect someone's capacity to stick to who they say they are and what it is that they say that they want, right? Is respecting someone based off of the fortitude of their principles, their morals, and their standards. That's masculine respect. Now, what I'll say is this. Oftentimes, as a man, when you're in the game, when you're dealing with women in a particular way, the Strawman principle comes up in order to see if you respect her in a masculine manner. Right? Right? If you respect the projection that she has from her animus, that internal masculine assumption-filled or misdirection that she presents about herself, what her standards are, what her morals are, what her character is, then if you try to conform yourself to that standard, then she can't respect you as a man, because masculine on masculine in relationship dynamics does not work. And it's not even a gender-based thing, right? We oftentimes can even see this when it comes to relationships and alternative lifestyles, like the homosexuality community, the LGBT community. Most of the time, someone who's very masculine and someone else who's very masculine, not in how they present themselves necessarily, but more so in being more focused on what you're doing than who you're doing it with, that establishes a masculine foundation for those interactions, right? Now, both people are going to have a difficult time both saying, I want to do what I want to do more than I want to interact with you, unless they want the same exact thing the moment that they see one another. But the difference to understand with this is that most of the time when it comes to men and women, we view things somewhat differently. Now, for the most part, people want most of the same things out of a long-term relationship. People want most of the same things. People most of the time want to feel loved. People want to feel sexually compatible. People want to have a sense of connection with the individual. People want to have goal alignment. People want to have an ability to build with the individual and move forward into the future. That is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? But what most of the time people disagree about is the direction or the process through which how you get to that place, right? So when I'm talking about the animus, when I'm talking about the social programming comes from a perspective of the woman's internal masculine energy, right? The father figure that's in her subconscious that guides some of her actions and some of her beliefs. But if that woman is feminine at her core, that's not truly who she is, and it won't be a true paradigm and perspective, and it won't be a true map of what she's capable of and what she's willing to do depending on who's interacting with her, right? Now, men have feminine energy too, and I will touch on that. But when we're talking about animus possession, right, the Strawman principle is based off of this concept, right? That when a woman gets into her masculine energy, right, and she's speaking from a perspective of her standards, her principles, and her values in that particular way, her structure, how she would like to perceive a process, oftentimes, and there are exceptions, but oftentimes this is a straw man, right? It's not that you are creating a straw man about her, but that she's presenting you a straw man to see if you're going to attack the straw man, or if you are going to speak to her from a standpoint of dealing with her actual capacity for attraction and desire to you, right? Because a woman can be in her feminine energy. Let's say you want to have sex with this woman. A woman can be in her feminine energy and just simply tell you, I am not sexually attracted to you and I don't desire to engage with you. But we have to understand that there are different fears associated with this, right? One, there's the risk that through directly shooting you down, right, that from that perspective of letting it be known that she does not desire you, that she will miss the opportunity to receive things that would stroke her ego. Like I said, the masculine submissive man, the masculine submissive woman, they tend to have different priorities of what they want out of things. So what you have to understand is that a masculine submissive woman is going to be a woman who takes a dominant stance over her sexuality, right? And how does that make sense, right? If she's masculine and she's submissive, then how is she dominant over sex? She's primarily dominant over sexual access in a transactional manner, being for one of three things: emotional validation, social validation, or financial investment. And based off of her social programming, her upbringing, how low her cup is, and or how sexually attracted she is to you, that's going to represent and present from her to you what her price is and what it would be in order to engage with you sexually. And this is where Brody's scale of sexual attraction is a very important concept to understand. You know, Brody's scale of sexual attraction ranges from 5 to 10, right? So a 5 level of sexual attraction would be a woman who would be willing to engage with you sexually if you were to commit yourself to being her long-term provider and or husband, which is an extremely high level of emotional validation, social validation, and financial investment that removes certain responsibilities from herself so that she has the energy to be willing to engage with you sexually. It also removes some of the emotional and or religious shame that she may experience through religious sexual indoctrination. And it could also just make her feel more comfortable. Now, understand that that's no guarantee that it's going to be a consistent thing, but it's no guarantee that it won't be either. But typically a woman with that mentality is a woman with a masculine mentality, right? But even that woman who tells one man that he would have to be her husband to engage with her sexually, she may not truly mean that towards that man. If that man desires to engage with her sexually, but he decides to wait for her, she loses respect for that man and views him as feminine, right? Either feminine as perhaps masculine submissive if he has very high social programming himself, as far as the religious indoctrination and the social indoctrination, and doesn't view himself as sexually desirable, right? Or she may lose respect for that man if he agrees to it, but he has no intentions of actually following through. And this is another aspect of understanding the Strawman principle, right? Either you can speak directly to her desire, bypassing the animus, right? Being in a masculine stance of presenting what it is that you desire to do, but presenting yourself in a way that causes her to desire to do what you want to do. Now, I remember listening to Marie-Louise von Franz, right? And she was speaking of how the animus projection or animus possession works, right? Animus possession. How this particularly works is like this. When a woman gets into a defensive stance where she feels like somebody wants something from her, she feels unsafe for whatever reason, what can occur in this moment is that she will get to a position where she will start to push out thought processes that the masculine ideal in her mind, her projection of how she views men in her mind, is going to push itself out onto a man in a way that doesn't show the full spectrum of what a man is and who a man can be. Right? Now, one thing she said that Carl Jung used to say was that a masculine man will have a difficult time being in the presence of a woman who is in animus possession for more than 5 minutes without wanting to remove himself. Because from that perspective, he is going to have this instinct that the only way to overcome this very masculine, emboldened, assumption-filled woman, right, is to either beat her, assault her sexually, or to seduce her, right? Those are the 3 ways of engaging with it that would pop up to a man's mind. And then the other one would be simply to not engage at all. Now, of course, beating that woman, trying to overpower her masculine energy, is something that will become something that can be viewed as pretty abusive. Forcing yourself on that woman, that's some sick shit. You know, you need to go to jail, right? But another thing to understand is this. There's also the factor of seduction. That's another thing that can take place. Now, within this thought process, we need to understand a few different things. Now, in the grand scheme of history, the way that seduction is viewed often works in different particular manners. Now, there are several different forms and methods through which seduction can work, but it's just like when I talk about the concept of player. Like, I have player within my sexual polarity quadrant as one of the points that call the feminine dominant, but that's not always accurate because most of the people who I associate with, we don't view a player as someone who lies to women, right? So that'd be a different conversation. But one form of seduction can come through lies, through deception, through using your own feminine energy to give the impression that you are willing to submit yourself to that masculine identity and then to take the responsibility, right, which you may not take, for giving the person the impression that you're willing to meet their standards in order to get what you want. That's the feminine dominant, right? You become malleable to that masculine energy. Now, another form of seduction is to speak directly to the desire, right? Or to simply let it be known what you want to do, and then to speak that directly into the desire, and then to walk away, to allow the masculine energy that's there to dissipate. And then as that masculine energy dissipates, then that woman will then return to a place of, if her sexual attraction to you is high enough, that she'll want to pick up what you're putting down. Now, what does this mean? Let me go back to Brody's scale of sexual attraction. A 6th level of sexual attraction. That is about persistence, but it can also be pressure, right? Now, I'm not somebody who looks at, I do believe that there's been a moving goalpost when it comes to what sexual consent means, right? And certain things have a very much gray area when it comes to certain stuff, right? Very much a gray area. But on the 6th level, that's where persistence, consistency, maybe grand gestures, multiple dates pops in. And then either through the pressure that is applied, like when women say apply pressure, right? Or it's taken away. The thought of that validation that was being given is taken away. Then that is when the person is now willing to part ways with giving sex, right? Or giving what you want in order to continue to receive what it is that they're already getting. That's the 6th level of sexual attraction, right? Now, on the 7th level of sexual attraction, that's based more on comfort and just a small level of plausible deniability, right? So that's like, let's say you're very direct with a woman, or you're communicating with a woman, you want to engage with her sexually, and she says, oh, but I have a man, but I have a husband, and or she says, oh, I don't believe in sex before marriage, or something along those lines. And you say, hey, listen, just come over, you can have a couple of drinks, you can relax, I'll be on my best behavior, and we don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. Now, that is reverse psychology that works in the form of giving yourself an opportunity to be in that capacity, to be alone, to be separate from social influences, right? Especially when the idea of discretion is on the table. And then to use reverse psychology in order to bypass psychological reactants. But what you have to understand about the 7th level of sexual attraction is that plausible deniability is a two-edged blade. And I say never give anything to a woman in exchange for sex with her, or in the process of assessing if you want to engage with this woman sexually, or if she wants to engage with you sexually, that you would feel hurt or feel entitled to her body if she doesn't reciprocate. Right? Don't do that. Don't do that. Now, depending on the woman, sometimes if you do that, you're like, well, because I did this, that's not going to work for me. Then you get up out of there, right? And then if you leave, you walk away, and she's like, hold up, I want to keep getting what I was getting, and then she's willing to get with you. That's a slippery slope, right? But that's the 7th level of sexual attraction. It's based off of giving the woman the opportunity to feel comfort. That comfort level bypasses her dominant mentality around sexuality while giving her a little bit of that emotional validation, right? If it's taking her out on a date, then it's a little bit of the social validation, right? Spending a little money, that's the financial investment, just a small level of it, not a whole lot. And then giving her the emotional validation of feeling comfortable enough to feel that she can always turn down the opportunity if it arises. Because sometimes a woman can be open to having sex with you, but she hasn't completely made up her mind yet. And seeing you carry yourself with a certain level of self-control, not feeling as if you want it too bad in certain scenarios, especially on the 7th level of sexual attraction, it opens her up to release her own desire towards you. But what you have to understand in these scenarios is this: oftentimes that's not going to stop there, right? So that means that this only going to last as long, not always, because sexual attraction is not static, it's dynamic. It can go up and it can go down. So if it continues to go up, then you could be on a level where you're being direct with her, right? But if it goes down, then she's going to say sex feels like pressure, right? If it stays the same, then that means that you're going to have to be constantly dating your woman in order to engage with her sexually, constantly giving her plausible deniability about your sexual intentions in order to engage with her sexually, right? Now, after a while, you want to be able to just let her know what you're trying to do. That's on the 7th level of sexual attraction. So something else to understand is this: when we're talking about this, that's the 7th level of sexual attraction. So that could be like fucking on the first date, right? Or after the first date or the second date, that could be like a 7th level of sexual attraction, right? Once you get around 4 or 5 dates or some shit like that, or you're spending a large amount of time with this woman. It might be more around a 6 level, depending on how close you are in your vicinity, right? Now, when we get to an 8 level of sexual attraction, that is where sex feels like at least an equivalent exchange. And like I said, a woman is in her masculine energy, and that's how she expresses how she feels about sex when she doesn't desire you on a certain level. When she's not sexually attracted enough to you, then that can put her into a stance where she is going to present her price to you, right? She's going to present her price. Now, there are some women who will lie about the price and not have any intentions of following through because they want to get some validation, ESF, but some women are legitimately letting you know their price. But some of them won't even let you know their price. But if you start to press on the issue before they feel that the price has been met, then they'll bow out of the situation. Now, an 8 level of sexual attraction is a reactive sex drive. That means she's sexually attracted to you, enough to you, and the way in which you approach her, that you being masculine and direct about the way in which you want to engage with her sexually is something that she will be receptive and malleable to, as long as it doesn't require too much from her non-sexually. See, that's an 8 level of sexual attraction. That means it's an equivalent exchange. That means that as long as it doesn't take too much from her non-sexually in order to engage with you sexually, she'll be down for it. So a lot of casual sex can take place on the foundation of the 8 level of sexual attraction. The biology first approach works on pretty much a minimum of an 8 level of sexual attraction, because that is the level to where she feels that your dick and her pussy, that's an equivalent exchange. She's attracted to you. She's ready to get it popping, right? From that standpoint, she's getting closer to the feminine submissive, right? Even closer. And depending on what you want to do and on the level of dominance you're providing her, that might be feminine submissive enough for you, right? Just like a woman with a 7 level of sexual attraction to you, and I do have to talk about the 9-7 dichotomy a little bit, but for a woman with a 7 level of sexual attraction to you, you got to understand this, that if you're a man who doesn't want to do, like, who's not looking for anything casual, right? You're looking to spend a lot of time and energy with her because you enjoy her company. You're looking to go on dates. You're looking to have a good time. You're not that sexual. Or if you are, you're not looking to jump into bed with a woman, right? Then the 7 level may work for you. It may work for you. So it really depends on what you want out of the situation and how you want to engage. But let that be a decision that you're making for yourself, and don't allow that to be a decision that you're making because you think that that's what the woman will accept. Those are 2 completely different things, right? 2 completely different things. But on an 8 level of sexual attraction, when you bring up the opportunity to engage with a woman sexually, that's where being direct in your seduction and speaking directly to her desire is something that has a capacity to cause her to get out of her animus and to lower her defenses. Because desire overrides comfort. A woman's need for comfort, security, and stability is something that oftentimes comes from the animus. I know people often say that that's feminine, but feminine is malleable, right? It's fluid, it's flowing. It's not really principle-based, it's feeling-based, right? It's desire-based. To be feminine is to want who you want more than you want to do things a particular way. More than you're concerned with the process, you're focused on the person, right? Masculine energy is process-focused, principle-focused. Feminine energy is feeling-focused, and person-focused. Is focused on the connection, right? And there's 2 types of feminine energy. There's feminine dominant energy and there's feminine submissive energy, right? So a woman can feel that she doesn't want to fuck with you, and that can still be feminine, right? A woman can feel from a masculine perspective that she doesn't want to fuck with you, and that still be masculine, right? but it really depends on what it is. But typically, inside of the masculine submissive, there's some feminine dominance, right? All four of these traits are within everybody: masculine, feminine, dominant, and submissive, right? Now, something else to understand is that if a woman has a split animus, and this is something I do need to bring up, if a woman has a split animus, then sometimes the lower her level of sexual attraction is to you, the more she desires to view you from a perspective of the masculine submissive man, as the man who is going to primarily provide to her some type of emotional, social, or financial resource in exchange for access to her sexually at some point in time, or if never, right? So that's the gentleman within the gentleman gigolo complex. You're offering her comfort in exchange for sex, some type of comfort or security, right? Now, the higher up you get, the more of a chance you stand of being the gigolo rather than the gentleman. So at the 8th level of sexual attraction, even if a woman is somewhat feminine submissive towards you sexually, it doesn't mean that she's fully feminine submissive with you, nor that she wants a relationship with you. You gotta understand that. You know, I remember when I used to be a nice guy. When I was more of a nice guy, pretty much every woman I had sex with was a woman who would want to be in a relationship with me. Once I learned to be more direct and bold about my sexual intentions, some women just want some dick. And you got to be cool with that and accept that. Don't assume that every situation is going to just jump directly into the full package, especially when you're not leading with the full package. And sometimes if you are, that can breed feelings of distrust, right? If you're submissive, leading with the full package is not always so much of a bad thing, right? But you're really just trying to show that you want to be in that position, and you want to leverage as much as you can to be in that position. But when you're dominant, it comes off more so as love bombing. It breeds feelings of distrust because you're not giving them the opportunity to earn the other side of what it is that you're presenting, right? So if you lead with the non-sexual, a woman needs to earn the sexual, right? If you're leading with the sexual, the woman needs to earn the non-sexual, and vice versa, right? You're offering pleasure in the initial area, pleasure and structure, good D and guidance, or good P and guidance for the woman, something along those sides, something that gives pleasure and enjoyment and structure and instructions, right? Up front. And based off of how receptive they are, you give them more of that. And then when that crosses over into them having desires that also naturally come out on the other side of the sexual versus non-sexual, then they have to earn getting up to a higher level of accessing those things. And this is how you go through that process of integrating that animus, right? As a man, that woman may have a split animus, which means that you're either the gentleman or the gigolo. So on the 8th level of sexual attraction, that may be a woman who says, okay, I'm sexually attracted to him. The dick was good. Now what? Right? Another woman may say, damn, I'm sexually attracted to him and I'm non-sexually attracted to him. So if she feels like she's starting to give too much non-sexually, as far as her energy, as far as her time, as far as her money, then that may cause her to question you. And that may cause her to lose respect for you. But this is where we jump over to the 9th level of sexual attraction, right? Now, on the 9th level of sexual attraction, that's where feminine submissiveness is really starts to be closer to its peak, right? See, the 9th level of sexual attraction is active desire, right? So rather than you just being very bold and direct with a woman, now you could be indirect with a woman and just give her innuendo, and she's still going to want to escalate things further sexually. On the 9th level of sexual attraction, her animus in regards to trying to establish any type of price on sex or even trying to shit test you is not so much going to be on the table, right? On the 8th level, there may be a process of banter. There may be a quick little token resistance within presenting some type of masculine structure to you And if you keep your cool and stick to what you want and how you're communicating, or if you walk away, if she's not receptive to the way that you're approaching her, then she'll get with it. That's what happens on the 8 level when you're just being bold and direct. Your boldness is what overcomes that, right? So there's a difference between seduction and force. When your boldness is what overcomes it, right? From a standpoint of speaking to the desire directly without making an investment that puts pressure on her to agree in order to maintain that investment, then that more so yields to greater desire versus a greater feeling of pressure, of discomfort that leads to psychological reactance. Now on a 9 level, it's active desire. So with that active desire, you can find yourself in a position where you could be communicating with the woman non-sexually, but the smallest bit of innuendo, the smallest motif you make, that can be interpreted in a sexual way, especially through using doublespeak, right? She's going to want to follow the trail of that conversation forward, wanting to see what can take place because she wants to fuck with you, right? On a 9 level of sexual attraction, that's where a woman is going to be more willing to invest somewhat non-sexually in order to gain to maintain or to secure access to you sexually, right? Maybe not directly transactional, but of her own volition. Now, if you've been fucking with her for a little while, at that point, it may just be how receptive she is to you is what she's willing to trade, but she may not approach you sexually, but how much she's willing to be receptive to the things you say non-sexually is going to play a part in the investment she's making in order to have sexual access to you. That's where the animus gets out the way, right? And then on a 10 level of sexual attraction, and this is a funny thing, on the 10 level of sexual attraction, she's going to get a little bit more aggressive, right? So she may be willing to pay for it. She may be willing to try to take it from you. She may be willing to try to coerce you and pressure you, right? On a 10 level of sexual attraction, some women, they have this built-in somewhat fear of being alpha widowed. That is somewhat within that animus too. Like the fear of alpha widowhood, right? The fear that you may give her an experience that's so great. And some women will lie and say that this is what it is when it's not. So don't take this part to, don't project this onto every woman who turns you down. But she may genuinely fear that if she were to engage with you with how sexually attracted and feeling you she is, that she'll be willing to do anything, that it may be something she can't turn back from, that it may be something that she may lose all of her inhibitions with no logical thought process going into it. And if she doesn't trust that you are a good leader or that you have any type of long-term intentions in her, she may be willing to do it anyways, but she may feel the need to really shut down non-sexually in order to avoid getting caught up, right? And I think this is an important concept to understand with the 10 level of sexual attraction. So that would be a woman who's approaching you to fuck. And that's exactly what she's approaching you for, right? Now, from that standpoint, you might really be a gigolo. She might be like, listen, I want that dick. How much I got to pay to get it? Now, also keep in mind that the higher the feeling of desire is, the more energy is being poured out. If you do not know how to lower and to control where her desire is and how much energy is being poured out, then it's very easy for a woman in that state of mind to be in a very fragile, vulnerable position where she can get hurt. Very easy for that woman to be in a position where she may burn out, go into a low cup space, and then within that low cup space, she may have experienced some mental shit going on, right? Especially when you're taking women regularly to subspace. And that can happen on a 9 level. That's not so much an 8 level of sexual attraction thing, but that's a 9 level of sexual attraction thing. And keep in mind, it's dynamic, not static. So a woman can view you as an 8 level of sexual attraction, but just your vibe, the way you interact with her, the way she feels about you, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, can take her up to a 9 or a 10 level, or especially maybe even a 10 level during the act of sex, where she just loses all traces of reality and then gets into subspace, and then all of her inhibitions are gone and she's just in a very vulnerable position. Right? So there's different ways that sexual attraction relates to the animus of a woman. And I know I said a lot of this stuff to say I'm talking about the straw man, right? So that straw man is presenting a false view of what her desire and her capacity to be submissive is towards a man to throw him off the trail, right? And we can see this very heavily on social media, right? Many women get on social media and they talk about knowing their worth, they talk about their value, they talk about these different things, they talk about, oh, the bar is set so low for men. Anytime a woman is speaking in regards to what a man needs to give her in order to engage with her sexually, she's moving from a false premise that she doesn't have intrinsic sexual desire herself, which is a lie. Which means that she's speaking to men, the projection within her anima that she's speaking to is men that she's not that sexually attracted to. That means that if you are a man who knows that you're a dominant man, that shit don't apply to you. It does not. Anytime she's talking about the level of emotional validation, the level of social validation, which could be a relationship or a marriage, emotional validation, meaning your willingness to communicate with her, right? The level of financial investment, meaning how much money you're spending on her, applying pressure, taking her out on dates, providing a lifestyle. This is a straw man. That's not who the woman truly is. And beneath the surface, a lot of those same women, you might see that they're single mothers, right? And there will also be some simps who will buy into the straw man, who will listen too much to what women say on social media and in public formats and in different cultural, social environments, and take those things seriously. And if that man is judgmental or he's very socially programmed himself, he may even see a woman who has that perspective with different past experiences as she's just growing, right? But what you have to understand is that if a woman's core polarity is to be feminine, right? Or if her core desire, if she were in the ideal situation, she would be feminine submissive, then her becoming more masculine isn't actually her growing. That's her developing a defense mechanism. That may be her trying to siphon a certain amount of energy so that she has the capacity to be feminine submissive with another man, using the attention whore game. Right? Like sometimes what a woman will do in order to gauge how masculine and secure you are with yourself is to present what people call shit tests, right? To present what she believes is her ideal to see if you will feel insecure in the sight and in the conversation of what she deems as her preference. Most women don't actually end up with their preference, and many women even have opportunities to engage with men who they would view as their preference, but don't feel that spark, don't feel that connection. Right? Now, don't get me wrong, some of these things may be true. Some women do have a certain level of self-awareness, but a lot of these things may just be based off of past experiences rather than what she's experiencing with you, right? A woman may be in a position where she says, oh, she likes she likes a dude who's built like this, or she likes, big dick, she like a lot of money, she likes, dude who's has this, has that. A lot of that's some bullshit. I remember back when they had this thing going on about red flags, right? It was that whole red flags trend on social media, right? There were several women I had fucked, and some that I was even fucking at that time, who were feminine submissive with me, or at the very least very cooperative, right? They'll cook for me, clean for me, spend money on me, suck my dick when I wanted them to, right? But then they'll go online and say certain red flags. A lot of those red flags were shit that I do or traits that I have. And guess what? That didn't stop them from getting and picking up with what I was putting down. That's something that's pushed out towards weak males who would be in their vicinity to try to qualify themselves to her based off of that straw man. That was presenting a masculine ideal of what her animus believes that it wants. Remember my video, go back and watch my video. Women don't know what they want, and that's a good thing, right? Or at least a feminine individual doesn't know what they want, because there are some women who are masculine dominant. But keep in mind, everybody has masculine dominant, feminine, and submissive within them. So a woman can be masculine dominant with you. If she rewards good behavior, that's even better if you're a submissive man. But understand that most people who are dominant at their core are not going to be strict monogamous, right? So if you're going to be submissive, typically you have to accept that at the peak of submissiveness, within the feminine submissive, there's a couple things that come along with that. Not for everyone, but for most people. And this goes for men or women. Typically, one of those things is going to be wanting you to receive pleasure from how they penetrate you. Desiring you to be receptive to their mentality, right? This is what the dominant does. Then also, another thing that may occur is for you to be attracted at the fact that they attract other people, that they have options. So, like, oftentimes a feminine submissive woman will engage with a man who has multiple women. A woman may present her animus in the form of real possible things that can go wrong, right? Like, it could even be sexually transmitted infections. Now, keep in mind, I'm tested, I'm good, right? But I've engaged with a woman before where her way of testing me, and I've fallen into it before, I have, would be that first time we engaged in sex, we never even had a conversation about sexually transmitted infections. After we done fucked a few times, then it became an issue, right? Or she'll say, oh, I'm willing to do whatever you want. I just want to see test results first, right? That's the animus. It's something that's put out not because that's really how she feels, but that's a fear coming up from a defense mechanism, right? This shit it runs deep. It runs deep, right? It's a lot of different things that can come up when it comes to that straw man. For most women, nature can take over. Like when a woman has a non-level of sexual attraction to you, she can be a woman who most of the time is otherwise very sexually safe and very sexually selective. But when she comes across a man she has that non-level of sexual attraction to, she may put herself in a position where she's like, oh, take the condom off. She want to feel that raw dick. Keep in mind, this is very important to understand. The more feminine a woman is towards you, the more feminine submissive she feels towards you, the more risks she's going to be willing to take due to the lowering of her own inhibitions, and the more responsible you have to be with your program. The more she's going to be willing to give in a capacity that may drain her own cup, and once her cup hits E, once it gets low, then she is going to give you some type of nuclear shit test because she doesn't feel safe, or she's going to try to cut you off or something like that, right? A woman can want raw dick from you, want you to nut inside of her because that's how sexually attracted she is to you in that moment. Biology takes over, the animalistic primal instincts take over, and she wants you to nut in her. But that doesn't mean that once that baby gets here, that she's not going to hit your ass with child support, right? A woman may even be sexually desire you so much that she doesn't tell you that she has a sexually transmitted infection because she doesn't want to miss or risk the opportunity to get that dick. So you got to understand, the more sexually attracted to you a woman is, the more she's going to be willing to throw caution to the wind. And sometimes that caution is something that can put you in a bad spot. Sometimes a woman can have a 9 level or a 10 level of sexual attraction towards you, and if she feels like you're the type of man who wouldn't want to deal with a woman who has a boyfriend or a husband already, she may lie about the fact that she's in a relationship. She may lie about the fact that she's cheating. So what I will say is that not all social programming is bad, right? There are purposes for this. There's reasons for this, right? I know I try to have more so sex positive views and of not judging women for their body counts and shit like that. But there are real risks that can come with sexuality. A woman can experience dick that's so good from one man that it causes her to view another man in a different light who would be otherwise better for her in the long term. A woman can, and a man can, be so sexually uninhibited that they are constantly exposing themselves to sexually transmitted infections and passing them along. People can become so irresponsible with their sexual behaviors that they end up having unwanted pregnancies and then following through with the pregnancies and having babies, or putting themselves in a situation where they're having 1,000 abortions, taking 1,000 Plan B pills. Right? Not all social programming is bad. Right? Like, part of social programming is to say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't fuck your brother or your sister. Right? Maybe you shouldn't have sex with somebody who's close kin to you. With a high enough level of sexual attraction, certain primal instincts can kick in. And if the social programming isn't strong enough to avoid that, then you might come out with some six finger, 6 toe, web feet, caved in chest, elongated skull babies. Right? With Down syndrome and some health defects. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If somebody's born with that, you can control the circumstances in which how you were born. But it's just to understand that there are things that can occur that social programming help, prevent. Right? And what this social programming represents for the woman is her animus. It presents the things that her father, society, different masculine structures, different ideologies, sometimes religious, sexual repression and indoctrination. There are real risks that come with giving yourself over into these things, with being fully feminine submissive with some random man that you just met, and then you give him your whole life savings and he runs through your bank account, right? Or, your marriage gets destroyed. There are real things that can occur. Right? But I do believe it's important to integrate both your shadow as a man or a woman and your anima or animus as a man or a woman, and to not live a duplicitous lifestyle. Integrating the shadow isn't about living out of the shadow in a way to where you have no characters, no morals, no boundaries, no structure. Integrating the shadow is negotiating your true desires, right, in a way that is negotiated with your conscious mind, your morals, your values, your structures, and your principles. Right? Certain structures, values, and principles can be rewritten. And that's why as a man, you got to have principles. But when you understand the straw man, not every situation is a situation you should overcome. Some women are rejecting you for a reason. Sometimes that straw man is really, sometimes a woman can be sexually attracted to you and is presenting a straw man because she knows she has a sexually transmitted infection, but she doesn't want to tell you the reason she doesn't want to engage with you sexually. And if you seduce her beyond that point, then if you reap the repercussions of like the straw man, because the straw man is what? That is a false reason as to why she doesn't want to engage with you sexually. Right? If you overpower that through your own desirability, you may expose yourself to something you don't want to expose yourself to. So wrap it up, man. Protect yourself. If you want to, maybe even go get the woman tested first. So there's a lot of different gems in this video. My Cash App, $AMARIBALL. It's going to say Coach Brody. There's a lot of different gems I'm dropping in this right here. But understand, like, when you go on social media, do not take what women say so personally. Don't take it so seriously. Chances are, if you look at their lifestyle, the things that they do behind the scenes, it's not real. Like, I done fucked too many women who said that they were celibate on social media for me to take women serious when they say they're celibate. I done been with women who said they were celibate. There's been times where I try to respect it, and then the energy the woman received getting aroused in my presence, but trying to stick to those boundaries, those structures, put her in a position where it heightened her arousal to then share that with another man who was willing to disrespect those boundaries when he was in her presence, right? Those are real things that can take place. That's why you have to know what you want and to not bend yourself to be malleable to a woman's social programming just because she presents a straw man. Because the man who sees beyond that point of view is going to be the man who she has respect for in that moment. It's going to be the man who she relinquishes her desire to, who she lets her inhibitions go with. So one thing I often say is this, man. Either you be that nigga or you let her fuck that nigga in peace. Be that nigga or let her fuck that nigga in peace. We do have to understand that there's cup spaces as well. A woman can have a capacity to be sexually attracted to you on a high level, and she may be experiencing religious sexual repression that leads to sexual anorexia. And sometimes sexual anorexia and sexual repression can manifest itself in different ways, like maybe frustration, sometimes maybe an attitude, right? Sometimes it may manifest itself in like binge eating, like overeating to get that feeling of being full. Sometimes it might present itself through a little bit of a nervous tic sometimes, right? Sometimes that sexual repression can manifest itself through a woman having a very rigid and robotic movements in the way that she walks, right? Because you have to understand that on the gigolo side of the gentleman gigolo complex, for a woman who hasn't integrated her shadow enough to integrate her animus properly, she views the man who she desires on a high level sexually as dangerous. That danger is that taboo that leads to the increasing of that desire. But ultimately, that's not somebody who she truly respects as who she would want to follow as a leader. Now, let me go back to the different levels of respect, right? So like I said, there's sentient respect, right? There's something is alive, it's a being, right? Then there is respect as a person, which is you just don't want any harm to come by the person unless they did harm by you. There's masculine respect, which means that you respect somebody enough that what they say is who they say they are. What they say they want to do is what they say they want to do, and you don't try to bypass it because you respect and you don't try to test that masculinity, right? Or you may test it to see if that masculine energy is real, right? That's like if you're having a conversation with somebody about some type of philosophical topic or something that is concrete, and you want to see if they have a capacity to defend their ideals. You wanted to see if you can respect them from a masculine perspective, that they're logical, that they're structured, that they're principled, and that they have intellectual honesty, right? That they're consistent. But then the next level of respect is respecting as a leader, right? So a woman can experience sexual attraction to you because she respects you as a man, right? That respect causes her to desire your validation. That's one of my definitions of respect. One of my definitions of respect is to allow someone's opinion to have power over how you feel about a subject or how you feel about yourself, and desiring that approval, desiring that validation, which means that if you view that structure as solid, then you would be willing to dock your boat to that deck. And that's what feminine energy does with masculine energy. Feminine energy docks itself to the boat of masculine energy because the masculine energy is like the banks of a river that allows the feminine energy to flow, and it gives it structure. That's where polarity is at. It's not masculine on masculine. It's not feminine on feminine. Because masculine on masculine can only walk together as long as it's going in the same direction. Feminine and feminine may be stuck to each other, but it goes nowhere. It's chaotic. Right? But the next level is respect as a leader. Now, when a woman respects you as a leader, especially when a sexual relationship is involved, that means that what a lot of that means is that who you are as a man begins to integrate aspects of her animus to the point where it informs her animus about the way that a man should conduct himself. So rather than projecting from a masculine point of view what she believes and who she believes you are and how you should conduct yourself, she wants to follow where it is that you're going because you touch on both the gentleman and the gigolo side, and it's integrated into a full person who is a leader. That means that you have both the masculine aspect and you have the dominant aspect, right? That's what it means to respect someone as a leader. That means that not only are they a powerful individual, and powerful can be subjective to different areas of life, different areas of competence, but you also have structure, you have values, you have principles. You reward good behavior, you push them, you challenge them, and ultimately the direction that you're going in is going to help them with their process of self-actualization. It's not only about what you want to do and who you are, but also about if your principles and who you are is something that also accounts for them, their emotions, and giving them the capacity to follow you. And when a woman's masculine energy also aligns itself with your masculine energy, right? Not only her being feminine submissive with you, but her internal masculine, right, aligns itself closely enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But when it aligns itself enough with your values and your structure, due to seeing that it's more solid. See, let me explain how part of that happens, right? I only got but so much more time left to make this video. I'm on my lunch break. Part of what happens in this scenario is this, right? When a woman feels as if her social programming is something that is limiting her, or it's repressing her, it's shutting her down, it's closing her off, it's limiting the experiences that her shadow desires to have. Or she's seeing sides of you as a man that show that you have a capacity to be a full person and not just this caricature of one of the archetypes that she has within her animus. She comes to a place where she may test you, or she may just relinquish control and decide to follow you. That's because you're more solid than the idealism she has in her mind of what a man should be. Right? You make her feel like a natural woman. You get what I'm saying? So that's part of where that takes place. Now understand that every woman is following a man. Right? Every woman is following a man. That man may be whoever wrote the Bible or the religious text that she believes in. It could be whoever is governing certain aspects of the social agendas that she follows and that she subscribes to. It may be whoever pays her bills, like at her job. But oftentimes, these socially programmed structures do not provide her pleasure. When these socially programmed structures do not provide her pleasure, it puts her into a scenario where she has to find pleasure outside of the masculine structure that she submits herself to. And this is what leads to a duplicitous mentality and a duplicitous lifestyle. Think about it like the masculine submissive and the feminine dominant. Let's say you go to work on a daily basis, right? You aren't at your job for the intrinsic desire of doing what you're doing for work. You're not really living the life that you want to live. But when you get off of work, you have to go to get drunk or get high or get fucked up or engage in something that takes your mind away from those things. Now, you don't truly view those things you may do as something that's going to help with your progression or your growth. It's something that just gives you a release, some pleasure. Now, what can happen? There's two different places and two different ways to get to that integrated space from that perspective. Right? Either your emotions get involved and you find ways to find fulfillment and pleasure in what you're doing, or that's from the masculine perspective. That means that the principle, the purpose, like from the masculine submissive stance, you work yourself up, and through that principle, through that process, you get to a place, right? You get to a place where you find pleasure and purpose in what you're doing. That's when you get to the masculine dominant stance. And when you find pleasure and purpose, and then there's intrinsic desire within that, boom, now you're in an integrated stance. But then there's also going there from the feminine perspective, right? Where what it is that you're doing, feminine submissive, from intrinsic desire and intrinsic reward, becomes something that now gives you a capacity to better yourself. So let's say that the coping mechanism used for those hard times, or the coping mechanism used for that hard work, is drugs, right? I've actually seen women who were addicted to drugs who got so sexually wrapped up in a man and so emotionally wrapped up in a man, but that man had a program. This man was a man, right? And it overtook the coping mechanism. I've seen women who were addicted to certain foods. Like, I remember one time I seen a woman, she was on a diet. She was going vegan for a month, right? Or at least vegetarian for a month. She was about to break her diet. She was losing weight, looking better than she did in a long time. Her daughter tried to stop her, like, Mom, don't eat those ribs. He's like, no, I can't do it anymore. Then her man came in with the masculine dominant energy, said, put that down. Didn't have to raise his voice, but she respected him and desired him so much and desired his approval. And that validation and the pleasure she received from him was more powerful than the release and the relief she was going to get from eating that food. So she put it down. Daddy spoke and she listened to what the fuck Daddy said. Right? I done seen women who was on drugs who went through that. Right? Now let me bring it in from a different perspective. Let's say that you're playing video games as a relief from working all day. You just want to clear your mind and do it. Let's say you get so good at video games that you become a streamer, right? You become a streamer and then you start to make money, enough money to provide for yourself through what it is that you do for fun. Now you're getting to an integrated position, right? Something that helps with your self-actualization, something that you intrinsically enjoy to do. You could say the same thing with music. Let's say music replaces drugs. Something you intrinsically desire to do that you're invested in starts to reap and have a return on investment due to the skill that you've picked up in your time engaging in that activity. Now you're able to integrate into a lifestyle where something that you enjoy to do is something that also returns dividends, but it takes time to get there, right? If someone says, if you play these video games, man, you can become rich, right? If you're not good real quick, you're going to get frustrated and you're going to quit. Right? But, and that's that leading with the full package thing. But if you start off and you're just doing it because you're enjoying it and you're having fun and you're malleable to that experience and you're just enjoying yourself, you start getting invested in what you're doing, then you realize that you have talent within this area. You're doing the research, the homework, to learn what it takes to be successful in that particular area. You're starting to get a bunch of kills. Let's say you're on Call of Duty. Let's say you're playing whatever it is, the game that you're playing. Then you get to a stance where you realize, like, damn, I can actually do this. And then you actually do it. Now you may still have to work a job on the side till you get there, right? But you might get there. It's the same thing like when I talk about the biology first approach, or a woman being feminine submissive, right? Or a man being feminine submissive. You're not doing it for the guarantee of what you're getting out of it. You're doing it from an intrinsic place of desire and respect. You have respect for the game. You have respect for that solid masculine structure. If you're invested enough with someone who actually has structure, who actually has a program, then that program will build you up to the place where you can actually reap the benefits, right? And when you reap those benefits from a place of being invested, of understanding that structure, that system, and putting yourself in a position to make yourself attractive for the outcome that you desire, a woman can go from being a fuck buddy to a wife, right? But if she sucked dick 3 times for 2 weeks and it says, oh, now I want a relationship, she's not going to actually get to a place where that's going to be effective, because she's going to lose respect for how little she had to do to actually get that validation in return, right? And she's not going to be malleable enough to learn the things necessary to earn that approval so that she can be in a position to actually be ready to play the role that she desires to play. There's pre-qualification versus earned qualification. So I do think it's a lot of gems to pick up from this stuff. A lot of gems, right? A lot of gems to pick up from here. And there's a reason why I speak about the sexual polarity quadrant in the way that I do. And understand, as a man or as a masculine dominant woman, not everybody who's feminine submissive with you is going to be someone who you can or should integrate with. It doesn't work that way either. I was listening to a woman who took a masculine dominant stance with a man. She had a submissive. We were having a conversation the other day. And she was saying that through that process of being masculine and dominant with that man, she was teaching him different things that helped him come into a better awareness of himself. Through this process, this man realized that he was really meant to be a dominant through dealing with a masculine dominant woman. So she couldn't have integrated with him because ultimately he was to be a dominant and she was a dominant. That wouldn't have worked. But sometimes as a masculine dominant, you're receiving what you're receiving, right? The desire, the respect, maybe some pleasures coming out of it, but you're the primary giver of pleasure, primary receiver of control. And sometimes a person is just in your life for a season and you're in their life for a season because there's something that they need to learn so that they're better equipped to go to the next stage of their life. And it's not really about ending up with you, right? Very important concept to understand. And I think this can be lost sometimes, right? A woman can be feminine submissive with a man for a period of time, integrate aspects of her sexual shadow into how she views men, so she starts to integrate her animus. And let's say it's just a man who she's having casual sex with, who doesn't go out of his way to manipulate her, to play with her emotions, or he shows her that there can be positive manipulation in a way that benefits her. That she learns to get over her fears and insecurities revolving, feeling as if she's giving sex to a man. And now she's in a position where she knows how to experience sexual desire for the sake of sexual desire. Let's say it's a feminine submissive man who finally has an experience with a woman who is masculine and dominant, right? And let's say he was masculine submissive, but he comes across a woman and he's very attracted to her, but she teaches him some things that helps him learn the intrinsic desire and reward that he can experience in just being platonic friends, or learn that you could be platonic friends with a woman. And some women actually have a program to where they'll reward your good behavior and you can still end up in a sexual relationship. Doesn't mean you're going to end up married. Doesn't mean you're going to end up forever. But it can help alleviate that fear and that insecurity that if you're not leading with getting whatever it is you want up front, that validates your ego from a perspective. Because remember, for most men, they're going to view the emotional things, the social things, the financial things as things they're giving up, things they're providing, right? And they're going to view sex as something that they're getting. In order to integrate your shadow as a man, you have to experience a woman desiring you sexually, right? To know that the dominant shit inside of you that oftentimes gets repressed is something that someone actually wants, that somebody wants to experience, that somebody wants to desire, that somebody wants to have, that somebody's receptive to. That can integrate your shadow and give you a different outlook on life. And all these things are just part of this process of life, man. So this is Coach Brody on the Strawman Principle. I'm out.